Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. Birth of a new dimension refers not only to a painting that I painted and this radio program. I am literally referring to the new dimension that Earth and Earth's surface humans and all of the life that is on Earth and really this entire galaxy are collaborating together in order to create. And it is a new dimension that is the end result of combining the worlds of spirit and matter. So these two seemingly divergent realms are actually two sides of the same coin. And just as in infancy, each one of us developed the sense of ego and identity by creating a boundary, a bubble surrounding ourselves, within which everything is us and outside of which everything is not us, not me, but the me versus the not me. So this dualistic expression goes on all throughout life. I've spoken on other broadcasts about how even the biological setup of the bodies that we are currently using encourages this sense of duality. You have left eye versus right eye, and our sense of depth is calculated by measuring the slight differences between these two viewpoints, about a couple of inches apart on your face. Humanity tends to observe the world through this dualistic perspective. Well, first of all, if you're new to my broadcasts, I'm a walk-in. What does that mean? I'm not the original inhabitor of this physical body. I'm an abstract energy presence that came into this physical body when its original inhabitant, the person who grew it from a fetus and was actually born into Earth, when she died, and she didn't just die by accident, she was actually horribly murdered by psychic attack and had a lot of neurological damage. And I created the flying rainbow lasagna shape. It is a type of hypertorus. If you speak math, what cube is to tesseract, torus is to flying rainbow lasagna. I added a new dimension to the formerly toroidal energy field of a human, and your DNA is also tightly coiled. This is called supercoiling. This happens at one of the first levels of coiling, where your genes create tiny toruses or tori. So, supercoiling. If you take two strands of your DNA and begin to twist them together, we get the familiar double helix shape. It looks like a twisted ladder. And if you keep on adding energy to it, twisting it and twisting it and twisting it, it begins to perform an activity called supercoiling. Pictures worth 1,000 words, videos worth 1,000,000 words. I have posted links to a supercoiling video on YouTube. And when, just like a thread or a piece of rope, as you begin to add more and more energy to the rope by twisting it, begins to double back on itself. And what you get are more and more complex woven shapes from the energy being put into it and twisting back on itself. In DNA, what your DNA does is wrap itself around little proteins called histones. And when it gets to the level of wrapping around a certain number of histones, it creates a loop that is exactly the shape of a torus or a miniature donut. All this just to get across the idea that you, on a tiny microscopic level, inside the nuclei of all of your cells, are shaped like a donut. And your non-physical energy self, the field that surrounds and interpenetrates your physical self, is also and has been shaped like, up until this point, a donut. And Earth's magnetosphere, the magnetic envelope surrounding the planet upon which we stand, which protects her from the onslaughts of cosmic particles and otherworldly energy, is also shaped like a torus. And the sun's heliosphere, which performs a similar activity, a similar role, but does it for the entire solar system. The sun's heliosphere extends far past Pluto. It is an energy envelope that's shaped like a donut, and it protects our solar system from cosmic debris and excessive onslaught that would make it difficult for life to develop and organize. That if we were constantly being bombarded by comets and asteroids and meteors and other disruptive presences, it would be more difficult to organize physical life on the planets in the interior of the solar system. And guess what? Even the shape of the galaxy that we're in, and every galaxy is shaped like a donut or a giant, giant torus. And at the center of the donut, where the donut hole is the singularity, or in science words, it's the supermassive black hole that is at the center of each galaxy that acts like the gravitational glue, quote unquote, and holds all of the rest of these stars or consciousness that is here together in a cohesive format. Well, I am a non-terrestrial energetic abstraction of consciousness. So when people ask me, Aurora, what planet do you come from? That is a lovely and lighthearted way of asking about my origins. And I used to have a community access TV show way back when in Woodstock called Planet Aurora, and it's too literal. I don't come from a physical place. My consciousness derives from a traveling collective of consciousnesses. So right now, what I'm giving you is crucial information about how experts do star travel. And all of this is necessary because we're preparing you for birth of a new dimension. If you are expecting clank, clank metal vehicles to fall from the sky and physical corporeal beings to come out of them, that you can shake their hand or, feed them a salad, that is not an accurate expectation. So when the coming together of the dimensions occurs, you would be erroneous if you were expecting it to happen via clank-clank metal spaceships. The idea of a spacefaring race creating a technological container and flying across the vast interstellar areas of space and coming to our physical planet shows that race is not developed enough to actually interact with beings from a divergent place or divergent time or moving at a very different rate. So let me parse all of that out for you. When you meet extraterrestrials and also extra-dimensionals, you are doing nothing more than meeting another aspect of yourself. And in impeccable terms, it's not yourself like your temporal self or your ego. It is an aspect of your own consciousness, your pure empirical consciousness, that is traveling from a very different direction and moving at a vastly different rate. We now must understand that we are all part of the totality. We are all, if you are consciousness, I'm presuming that my listening audience is conscious. If you have a spark of consciousness, you are part of the totality. The totality is like the larger entity or the larger being within which we all reside. And we are all microscopic shards of consciousness that when we are combined together, like a crystal or like a mosaic, we add up to the totality. Not all consciousness is equal. This means that some aspects of consciousness have been going through the process of consciousness refinement for a very long time. And we can tell this by their trajectory, that they are in alignment with certain timelines and they embrace certain values. And those values are the values of unconditional love. I've spoken about this before. When I use the term unconditional love, I'm not speaking about either a mammalian romantic attraction, like boyfriend-girlfriend love that results in procreative sex. Nor am I speaking about B, the airy-fairy, new age, nebulous idea of just being a real good person and, giving off good vibes and smiling a lot. I am speaking instead about a literal tone, just like this is an A on my piano. And let me play a beautiful A note. I have to go far away from where my microphone is. Hold on a minute. Much better. Let's do this properly. I give you an A note tuned to 432 hertz. That is a particular frequency. It is measurable. The tone of unconditional love is an actual frequency that your consciousness or your awareness or the non-physical energy centers of your body make when they are traveling through time at a particular speed without friction. So this is what it means. What you just heard is the result of sound traveling as waves through the atmosphere. Your consciousness right now is traveling through time. When your trajectory through time is unimpeded, that means there's no friction. That means that you are not either clinging to memories of the past or striving or reaching forward to expectations of the future. You are embedded within the present moment now. When you are doing that, you are literally creating the tone, just like this A note, of unconditional love. It's a tone that you make with the broadcaster, the great broadcaster that is sending out these consciousness signals to your own perception and your own mind and consciousness. You receive those signals and then send them back perfectly and seamlessly, without any interruption, without any loss of signal, without any entropy. That is called unconditional love. My consciousness collective that I derive from, that I am a star traveler with, we are a group of many, many individuated consciousnesses, just like a symphony is made as a group of many, many individual musicians, and we act together. We have not, it's not like the Borg, it's not like surrender now, resistance is futile, give up your individuality and join the collective. It's not like that at all. And when you become an ascended master, it's not like losing all of your individuality and becoming some neutral, flavorless, unindividuated consciousness. Far from that. You maintain your individuality and you maintain your true characteristics. So you don't drag with you from lifetime to lifetime characteristics such as, my name is this, I wear this suit of clothes, I live on this street, I'm defined by these characteristics, like my hair color or my nose shape or my shoe size. You aren't any of those things. You are the abstract presence that comes into a variety of contexts throughout time and expresses your truth through those different contexts. So if you're an artistic person and you are in the Neanderthal world, you'll find a way to paint with nuts and berries or red ochre pigments on a wall. And then if you're born in the 1800s, you will pick up watercolors or oil paints. And then if you're born in the 20th century, you might go to digital media rather. The idea is that the context through which you are expressing is arbitrary and changes over time, but the abstract impulse of who you are is the same. It remains the same. Or if you're a musician, you might have been an opera singer in the 1800s, but you're a punk rocker in 1970, and then you might be born into a completely different format, and who knows, create some kind of extremely, formalized, harmonic, uplifting music in the future. I think that's where music is really going. The whole point is, you are not the temporary aspects of self. Those are shed between lifetimes. You are the eternal aspects of self. And my consciousness collective is comprised of beings who have honed their consciousness to their most essential parts of themselves. And we travel in higher dimensions. And we share energy with each other as our fuel of unconditional love. So if I have 4 units of energy and I give it to my partner and they have 4 units of energy and then they give it back to me, I have 4 units of energy, there's no loss of energy. That is called unconditional love. Now imagine a network of consciousness, just like you can have a network of computers, where I send 4 units of energy to my partner and they send it on to the next person, the next person, the next person, and then it all circulates back to me and I get my 4 units of energy back. That's called unconditional love. This is what I mean when I say that we travel from star system to star system on wings of consciousness, and unconditional love is our fuel. Now, in this type of system, I am describing a perpetual motion system, like a heavenly reality, quite literally. I shouldn't even use the word like. A literal heavenly reality that does not have friction or entropy. However, a closed system, even if it doesn't have friction or entropy, is not going to be a perpetual motion system, because It's too predictable. So this is the idea that this collective, at a certain point, it needs to ingest new energy. It needs to ingest new ideas. It needs to be exposed to new things. It needs to gain the capacity for new possibilities and probabilities. If that doesn't happen, it's just like saying you have access to the world's, library of classical music. You can play anything that's been written, but you can't ever write a new note. And a system like that is very vulnerable because an outsider could look at it and say, oh, look, I see this system is going to be here at this time on this day, and I'm going to do something to harm it, or impede its progress. And if you cannot innovate, it's like being exposed to a new virus and your immune system doesn't know what to do. It says, I'm just going to have to die because I don't know what to do when I'm exposed to this. So occasionally, my collective has adventures in different places and gets energy and experiences and new ideas and new insight from having those adventures. And guess what, folks? My experience being here in the flesh as Aurora is one of those nutritive or nourishing life experiences and adventures that I do this. Please, again, do not misunderstand. It's not like being a member of the Borg. I am here as an individual, and I take full responsibility for what I do as an individual. That means that if something goes wrong, I'm not going to say, well, don't blame me. Blame the floating collective of consciousness that I come from in the sky. It's their fault. They told me to do it. It doesn't work that way. If I killed someone, if I shot someone with a gun, it's not the collective's fault. It's not anyone else's fault. It is my fault. It's like saying you are connected to a family. This is my family of consciousness. So, okay, 18 minutes. Why am I going so much into this? I don't usually speak that much about this. And the answer is I'm trying to draw a distinction between the concept of clank clank metal spaceships that emit physical beings that coming here to visit and the way that real travelers of consciousness go from place to place and who's who in this whole cosmic drama. And what incepted this topic for speaking was a post on one of the Facebook groups where someone asked, just to the general room, if metal ships landed, what would you do? Or basically saying, it's so cute because a lot of people are like, extraterrestrials, take me away, save me from my life. I'm bored in my job. I'm bored with human society. Human society is corrupt or toxic, and Earth's surface is getting to be more and more toxic in terms of pollution. Take me away. And that's like, not a healthy attitude. It's kind of like a woman in her life, like to use the analogy, in a very traditional society, a woman who feels dissatisfied in her life, and instead of saying, well, I should, take an education or start a business or do something to make my life better, is just looking to get married. And then I will marry someone and then they will take me out of my life and everything will get better. I think that there's that desire, the damsel in distress that wants to be rescued, that is very deep meta programming in human consciousness. And even if you're not a woman, if you are a male, if your gender is male, you still have within you this programming. You still watched Disney movies as a child, or have the concept of fairy tales and heroes where there's the damsel in distress and then a man heroically comes along and saves her. So in this analogy, Earth and humanity on Earth's surface is the damsel in distress, tied to, victimized, right, disempowered and tied to the railroad tracks, and is struggling and fluttering her eyelashes and saying, oh please, won't an extraterrestrial benevolent species come along and save me? And what I wrote and what I'm speaking about here is in order to have a healthy relationship, we are giving birth to a new dimension. We are coming together with new consciousness that we have never come together, we are coming together with them as if for the first time. That's the best way that I can say it. We're coming together or meeting as if for the first time. In order to have a good relationship, it is important for us to start off on the right foot. And when I say us, I mean Earth surface humans meeting both extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional beings. If you are prepared to fall on your knees and worship them as a super being, that's not going to be a relationship of equality. That's going to be a relationship of abuse or exploitation. And so much of what I do on this broadcast is trying to get humans to understand their value. You have a physical body, which, yes, burps and farts and poops, but it also has an imagination and access to creative life force energy. The idea that you can eat food and use that to fuel your imagination and create reality with your mind is amazing. And it is, you're in a different position than a being that is a purely abstract, non-corporeal being. This is what I'm trying to say. When you're non-corporeal, when you're abstract, you don't have access to the same levels of innovation that you do when you're literally in the physical. You come into the physical to make new things, literally to make new people. You know, if you want to make a new person, you got to have mommy plus daddy to equal baby. Get them together and make a baby. You don't just have baby, just add water, like suddenly arise or just spontaneously exist. So the idea is, if we wish to make new ideas, new music, new artwork, new inventions, new technology, new farming techniques, new types of plants, new anything, new babies, new combinations of genetic characteristics that lead to new awareness and new behavior patterns. If we want to do any of that, we have to get into the physical in order to do it. This is what I mean when I say my consciousness collective has physical adventures in order to fuel the continued journey of consciousness. And the journey of consciousness goes on across the ages. It is eons long. It is indeterminate in length. All right, let me just refocus the conversation back to the original intent, creating a distinction between different modalities of travel for consciousness and the distinction in values for the different cultures that would use these different forms of travel. So one culture would get into a physical vehicle, like you get in your physical car and drive down the road, except they would fly across interstellar space and then come down on your planet. And a different type of being would travel using pure consciousness on the stellar network. And the stellar network connects not only our sun is like the local cell phone broadcasting tower, it connects all stars. And in order to use it, you must not only understand that there is a singularity inside of each star and inside of each one of us, you must also be a coherent being whose consciousness is focused on your true essence, the true values of who you are as a person, not on the peripheral trappings of the ego. Because when you go through this, it's a stargate. Are you guys getting it? The stellar network is a series of star gates, and they are gates of pure consciousness. You don't travel in a vehicle other than your body. Your body is all the technology that you require, but your body must be tuned, just like an instrument. My instrument over here, in order to play it properly, must be tuned, and we have to learn how to play it. So when you go into the sun, if you are identifying with your ego and the temporal aspects of self, you will experience death. If you are identifying with your eternal aspects of self, you will experience a sunbath that washes away everything that isn't truly you. So when really advanced beings hop on the stellar network and travel on their pure consciousness conduits, they don't bring with them the peripheral, temporal trappings of their ego. They bring with them only the core values and refined aspects of the essence of their consciousness. Their pure love. When you go through the sun, when you go through a stargate and you travel on the stellar network, you are made of pure love. All right? So a being that travels on a network of pure love, it is not possible for them to oppress others. That's the antithesis of love, because love is about equal giving and sharing, and really about freedom and respect and respecting other people. When you really get into examining and analyzing what it takes to be unconditionally loving, this equal giving of I give energy to you and you give energy back to me. And it's also a loss of boundaries and a dissolving of identity, where there is a oneness that arises from this equal sharing of energy. When you are truly embodying that truth, it becomes impossible to oppress or diminish others. Let's use an analogy. The analogy is, before all of the races and humans on the various continents of Earth became connected via seafaring, thousands of miles over the oceans. People lived on their own individuated continents, and they didn't connect that much. One day, a group says, hey, let's build a bunch of vessels and just set out over the ocean and just explore and see what's out there. So they build a bunch of boats, get to the next continent after many travails and much difficulty, and then they find that there's other people that live there already. And what are the ethics involved? So if you are a student of human history, then you will say, well, the ethics involved are barbarism, the ethics of the barbaric. So in short, the ethical quandaries of the barbaric are might makes right, only the strong survive, and to the victor go the spoils. Now, these barbarian values have actually been translated and brought forward as cultural values into what would be considered the modern age. And they show themselves in even scientific paradigms or scientific expectations of the way the world works. And what I'm talking about now is Victorianism. And so the late 1800s of the late 1800s of the Common Era. And the mindset of the people of that era was that if you worked hard, then you got rich, or you got wealth, or you got the physical resources that you needed because God smiled upon you, the Lord, Jehovah. And if you didn't please God, then you didn't get the money that you needed, or the food that you needed, or you were struck down with a disease in some way. And it is out of that mindset that Charles Darwin, he is the creator of the science's theory of evolution. And it is fascinating to note the changes that happened in the biological structures of organisms over time. And it is even more fascinating to ascribe values to those changes, such as this species survived because it was stronger. This species survived because it was better. It outcompeted the other species around it. It out-ate them, it outswam them, it outflew them, it had bigger, meaner teeth or whatever. So there's the idea that is programmed in on a subtle level, even into the 20th and 21st century, that if you can oppress or overcome or overwhelm another aspect of consciousness, I was going to say an opponent, but let's not call them an opponent, because you're two cells that live on the same body. There is a teaching in this culture that says you're a good person if you compete with other people and win. You're a good person if you're bigger, stronger, faster, have bigger teeth, and bite harder than all of the other people. This is the idea of capitalism, in our present form of capitalism, that, if you run a shoe store, you should have better quality merchandise, better advertising, and lower prices, and you should run your competition out of business. So this attitude is, first of all, it is evident, it shows evidence of a not very evolved culture. It shows that the culture that says, I'm allowed to build a bunch of boats, take my boats wherever I want, find that there are resources there, and if I'm stronger, faster, or have bigger teeth than the other people or animals there, I can overcome them and take their resources and do whatever I want. That mindset is not a very evolved or advanced mindset. And the cultures in space that have done similar things. They said, we're not going to build boats out of papyrus or boats out of wood and sail across an ocean and go to a new continent. We're going to build boats, vessels, out of metal or, an advanced polymer. And we're going to physically convey them across interstellar space and get to, quote unquote, the next continent. And it doesn't really matter to us if there's already somebody living there. If we have faster ships and sharper teeth, then we can overwhelm them, and we're allowed to do so. Well, all of that is antithetical to love. This is the way that the cosmos was actually set up. The way that things were intended, each planet was meant as a nursery or a place where consciousness could grow and be nurtured and come to a certain level of maturity. And when it is mature enough, that culture is then allowed to spread to other new places. This is analogous to a petri dish. If you put some mold or yeast spores on a petri dish, the petri dish is like a sterilized medium. It's just food for these little microorganisms to eat. What these microorganisms do is literally they culture that sterile medium. They eat the resources that are there, they form structures, they create an organized world out of this potentiality. And then, if you're a little mold, you can't just jump off of the surface of the petri dish until your culture is ready. The mold has to get to the level of maturity where it can actually create tiny spores. And there's a whole mechanism to the mold of how the spores get released and how they get kind of puffed upwards into the atmosphere so they can then float and find the next quote-unquote petri dish, okay? Now let's say that you are a scientist and you're intervening. I have cultured these microorganisms here on this petri dish. They haven't gotten to the level of making spores yet, but I want to propagate them. So I'm going to take a little scraping off of that petri dish and just put it, whatever, in a test tube, in a pipette, in something else, on a piece of paper, and carry it physically to the next place. We're talking intervention, some kind of technological intervention, and then smear it on the next petri dish. This is another way of inoculating the next petri dish. That is what clank clank metal spaceships do. They lift up the physical bodies or physical culture remnants from a planet petri dish and fly it to the next petri dish. And the problem with this is that the process of maturation of consciousness that is necessary to fly without technological intervention has not been achieved. When those mold spores, to get into the atmosphere, the spores they're like genetic material. They're like, sperm and ova. They are consciousness held within a state of suspended animation, like a seed that can travel. It's not regular active cells of the mold colony. And some spores are so resilient that they can literally travel across interstellar distances. Like the spores of the Psilocybe cubensis mushroom are actually coated in a UV protectant coating that makes them viable even if they are exposed to a vacuum and essentially the circumstances that one would find in interstellar space. So all this to say that the mold culture, in order to transfer itself in a natural way, without the intervention of a technologist or a scientist or some other being actually carrying it over, in order to travel in an unassisted way, it has to transform itself into a consciousness packet, like get packed up in a suitcase that can travel across space. And then once it gets to its new place, it's like brought out of suspended animation and revivified, okay? So if you are a star culture, you live on a planet, you have whatever, thousands or millions of years of development of culture on that planet. The idea is you are supposed to reach cultural maturity, wherein you recognize that the physical body is merely a container for consciousness, and that consciousness can travel via the stellar network or through stargates, and can does not have to go through the intervening vast distances of interstellar space. Basically, by refining your understanding of the world and understanding that the world is not just the world of hard-edged physical objects that we see. It's not just a world of planets suspended in the vacuum of space. That's like the tip of the iceberg. There is a huge, unperceived connecting area. That is the area of the higher dimensions that connects these islands, these planets. So now let's get into the ethics of leaving your own planet. This is just like the ethics of leaving your own continent. When the culture develops to cultural maturity, it recognizes that when you leave your own home, you're actually entering someone else's home. And you have to be respectful of not stepping on someone else's toes. So if you are going to, travel to a different planet, you understand that planet is very likely already inhabited with consciousness, and you have to be a welcome guest or a welcome visitor to that place. If your culture has matured to the point where you can travel on the stellar network through stargates, and you are not so wedded or clinging to your temporal ego that you're not making choices that are based in the ego or what is good temporarily. So, because this is the deep understanding. If you go to a different planet, you are not merely interacting with, other people or strangers. You're interacting with aspects of yourself. These are cells of your own body that you will be interacting with. Do you hate cells of your own body? Do you feel that it's appropriate to kill, mutilate, and destroy them, or even inadvertently destroy them? Many people demonize the Europeans who traveled west to the North American continent. Some of the cultural practices were horrible, in terms of the oppression of the Mayan culture when the conquistadors came. Some of the oppression was microbial. It was not even intentional, but the immune systems of the people from the European continent had developed resistance to diseases differently than the Native Americans of North America. When the Native Americans were exposed to some of these new strains of viruses and microbes, they didn't have the capacity to protect themselves. And so some of it was barbaric cultural practices of oppressing another culture, and some of it was biological. That you could be a very, very nice, loving person, but you could be carrying some very unloving germs. And if you fly to someone else's planet and you infect their planet with your unloving germs, you could wipe out their population. You could wipe out what they are, just so that you could travel there. And so let's talk about this. What are the motivations for leaving? What are the acceptable motivations for leaving your home planet, your home world? What you've destroyed your own world and now you want to destroy a new world. That's not going to cut it. This is all about like if you were going to file a flight plan with the cosmos and say, Cosmos, I'd like to go from planet where I am to this planet over here. And the cosmos, if you're a loving being, is going to say, well, tell me all about it. Why do you want to do this? And this is exactly the same value system that we must use to analyze all of our motivations and behaviors on a moment-to-moment basis. Like, during my day, of course, I need to eat and drink and sleep. I need to get the basic physical resources for my body. Other than that, I have to examine my behavior towards other people. Is it appropriate for me to impose my desires on someone else for my own convenience? Or is it more appropriate for me to respect that they get to make their own life choices? They get to follow their own trajectory of consciousness. They get to essentially live their own life. We all agree on a basic level it's not appropriate for me as an individual to come into your home and tell you what to do as an individual, such as what to eat, who to have sex with, what type of sex to have, what to think and feel. That is you. That's your personal realm. And I would not have the temerity to go against your boundaries and go inside of your heart, your life, your mind, and tell you who to be and how to be it. Well, if you are truly an ethical star traveler, you would never do that to another culture. I wouldn't go to someone else's house on Earth and say, I'm now summarily redecorating, I'm putting up rainbow curtains, I'm putting down a rainbow carpet, I like rainbow a lot better, I'm making you eat, rainbow salads and smoothies and fresh juices, and that would be totally inappropriate. I have to let everybody create their own house and live in the world that they wish. What I am allowed to do is offer people options. I can say, hey, look at my house. My house is rainbow colored. I eat rainbow food. This is what my life is. I can model a different way of being to people and then give them the recipe or, behavior patterns that they need to make their own rainbow home. That is the extent to what I can do ethically. I've spoken about this before. The question of Aurora. If you have flying rainbow lasagna ideas or energy, why don't you just exist in an abstract realm, wave your magic wand and kapow, make everything better on Earth? And the answer is, it doesn't work that way. It is inappropriate for me to impose my desires externally, just like it wouldn't be right if I, from the United States, tried to tell the people of France how to live. No, you live in France. You get to make your own choices about how you live. It is only appropriate if I move to France and become a French citizen, then I should be able to be active in their elections and in their government. So, being here on Earth, being in a human body and participating in Earth's surface human culture gives me the wherewithal to have an impact in this time and place. And I get to say, hey, I don't think we should be burning fossil fuels anymore. We should look for renewable resources. We should have bike paths everywhere, etc., etc. And I emanate these ideas. I do not impose them upon others. I emanate them, just like emanating a tone, saying, this is the note of A, and if you want to sing along with me, here's how you do it. And that is the ethical approach to sharing ideas and sharing what you have in a new culture. So before any culture gets to become an ethical spacefaring race, they have to examine their motivations. They have to say, why do you want to leave your planet? A good enough reason to leave is not, well, we've polluted our planet and we want to leave so that we can find a clean place to live. That doesn't work. You don't get to move into a new house just because your old house is dirty or because you've used up all of the resources on your old house. It's like, oh, we've used up all of our water. We need more water. Let's go to your planet and get your water from there. Well, once you begin to see that you're not just an individual acting in a vacuum, you're actually part of an enormous entity, and that what you do matters. Sometimes when people dilate their scale and they say, well, I'm inside of something really, really large, I'm really, really tiny, therefore nothing that I do matters. That's the opposite of the truth. The truth is that down to the most microscopic detail of your life, you matter. The timelines and possibilities of your life are analogous to the blood flow and metabolism of a much larger being. A much larger being is not corporeal. It doesn't have blood and oxygen in its blood the way that you and I do. However, it has time flowing throughout its organs. And when your life is in the correct format, when you're on the right timeline, thinking the right things, having the right experiences, and moving in the right direction, it's like the giant metabolism of the much larger entity is also healthy and moving in the right direction. When you're on the wrong timelines, then that larger entity is also, it's disturbed or it's ill at ease or it's not okay. So that larger entity cares profoundly about every single tiny detail of your life, about whether you went out your front door at 12:59 or at 1:03 to go to the store to buy some milk. That larger entity cares because you are And all of our tiny microscopic life experiences are all adding up to the meta experience of this much larger entity. So if we say we're part of this much larger entity, in your body, you would not want to have your cells fighting amongst themselves. This would be considered having a disease like cancer or an autoimmune disease. If your immune system is attacking your joints, this is arthritis. This is called, a bad disease that you don't want to have. What we are experiencing right now in terms of Earth culture, experiencing divergent space cultures, and we could say that includes beings that are extraterrestrial and they are physical, they're corporeal, or beings that are extraterrestrial and are non-physical, are non-corporeal. These all represent aspects of consciousness of the totality, as I described it. Particles of consciousness that are moving at a vastly different rate and coming from a very different direction than your present consciousness, okay? So in order to give birth to this new dimension, in order to really be prepared for coming together with beings that come from either different planets or different dimensions or different realities or different times, we have to refine our consciousness. So I will tell you what the birth of a new dimension experience will be like, will be more akin to a journey of consciousness and a shift in your mental state, and not a literal transportation of your physical flesh in a physical vehicle. So if you are waiting for gray saucer-shaped vehicles, made of metal to come out of the sky, I'm really wanting you to get the upgrade, get the new outfit for your mind, and be in style. Don't be wearing that old outdated outfit. So the new understanding is, when you look around, you look at your visual field. This is like what you can see with your eyes. Imagine that is a type of movie screen, and that when you begin to experience contact with otherworldly beings that travel on the stellar network, when you talk with them, you will experience a rearrangement of your visual field. So whatever, if you are looking out your window at a bunch of trees and grass and sunlight, in order to travel and speak with a new being, you wouldn't physically move your body any place. You could still be sitting quite comfortably on your couch looking out the window. However, the pixels of reality, like the little packets of light that you're seeing as your visual field, will rearrange themselves, and you might begin to see a anthropomorphic form in front of you. An anthropomorphic meaning human-shaped, one head, 2 arms, 2 legs. And sometimes you might even see like the giant eyes, the giant almond-shaped eyes and a triangular face. Don't take it literally. This is not what you're actually seeing. You are looking at a cosmic shorthand, or a symbolic representation of quote-unquote other. What you're really looking at is a mirror. People who are afraid of extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional contact need to turn the telescope into a microscope and look within. It is necessary to do a lot of self-analysis and see what is inside, what is in the dark corners of your own consciousness or perception or mind. This is why I teach that before you start to access the higher faculties of perception, you really have to start with that firm foundation of unconditional love. Just like that tone of A. It is a tone that your heart chakra makes. So it's like a whirling energy center, just like the tires of a bicycle. The faster they go, the more stable the bicycle is. The faster your chakras turn, the more stable or stability they give to the overall aspects of your non-physical body. When you have enough energy stored up as unconditional love, you have the wherewithal, the emotional resilience to perceive and not have a negative emotional response, or quote unquote go crazy, or quote unquote freak out. It means you have enough love to be accepting of what you perceive. And processes of inner cultivation for yourself are necessary to go through before you begin facing this cosmic mirror, because otherwise, when you look in the mirror, you'll see all of your own dark side kind of stuff. If you have the ideals inside of barbarism, if you think that it is right to oppress others, hey, I'm strong because I got the biggest muscles, it's okay for me to punch you in the face and take your ice cream. If you really think that's okay, then that's an aspect of your own self that you need to explore. And when you begin meeting beings in the cosmic mirror, some of those beings will reflect those aspects of consciousness back to you. To use a different analogy, if you are a person who has cultivated themselves and their values to the level of unconditional love, and you accept what is inside of yourself, and then you look in the cosmic mirror and you meet what you perceive as quote-unquote other, you will meet a very loving being. You will meet other aspects of your own consciousness coming from a vastly different direction, moving at a vastly different rate, but matching your values of self-sovereignty and love, or being able to make your own choices and not imposing yourself upon others. So it is very similar to the experience of having a psychedelic journey or a psychedelic undertaking. When people begin to alter their brain chemistry and go into higher dimensional states, the first thing you have to do is a lot of house cleaning, because you will be put face to face with all of your own darknesses, your deepest, darkest presumptions, your ignorance, your addictions, all of those things. And it's necessary to accept them in order to clean house. And the acceptance is like saying, I see that that is there, and I know where it comes from, and I don't deny it, and I understand why I or that person acted in that way. And that is like a type of enzymatic action, that acceptance that unlocks or breaks up the blockage when we are experiencing these pains or these friction or entropy. There are blockages to the unimpeded flow of awareness. And when I speak about the metabolism of the greater time being within which we live, that we're talking about keeping that flow of awareness and reducing the friction. The friction is anything that makes it not possible to perceive in a fluid sense immediately, right now. So let's say that, boom, the dimensional portals open instantaneously right now, and everyone is put face to face with, quote unquote, the other. Dependent upon where you are in your inner levels of maturation, that will determine what you are actually seeing and perceiving. Understanding that you're looking in a mirror is really important. This is just like, when a person takes a psychedelic voyage, if you understand, you are examining aspects of your own inner world. And if you do it effectively enough, you can heal them and then move beyond what are your own inner boundaries and connect with something much greater. When you do that in terms of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional contact, what you end up doing is connecting with your own higher self. When you do it right, you aren't connecting to anything other than you. I say it is analogous to kissing yourself in the mirror. As you approach the mirror, and the mirror is not a literal mirror, it is a boundary or a watershed moment. You think, this is pretty scary. I'm getting close to something. I don't know what it is. I can't quite see it. There's a sense of abstract fear, because the fear is literally a boundary beyond which there is a new world. And it is necessary to approach that boundary of fear and maintain a loving stance and then move through it in order to make that connection. And when you do, that's the moment of quote-unquote kissing yourself in the mirror. It is an acceptance and a connection. This is, many Native American traditions talk about the return of our star brothers and sisters. And I'm trying to tell you that these are nothing other than, or more magical than, other aspects of our own self. And it is important not to deify these other aspects of self. They have their own ignorances and things that need to be learned, and to feel equal and equally valuable and equally valid in terms of your trajectory of consciousness. What you've learned and what you bring to the experience is equal to what these partners bring. And so, again, I'm making the distinction. This is a meeting between consciousnesses that does not happen via technology. Nothing more technological than your physical and non-physical body and your consciousness and the neurotransmitters and energy that is flowing through your consciousness. That's all that you require. So this also means that we don't have to spend a lot of money on a physical effort at physical space travel. That is showing that this culture is not mature enough. When you are mature enough, the idea of putting on a spacesuit and getting into a tin can and flying in the sky is very limiting. It's not what you really wish to be doing because, and I know I only have a few minutes left on this broadcast, I know I've spoken a lot about the need to begin to eat pure light and changing the program from being a physical object eater to being a light eater. And the necessity for this is that right now you need a planet. You need a planet to be the intermediary to catch light for you with chloroplasts and turn into physical objects that you can eat. So in order to reach maturity and leave the surface of your planet, you need to no longer require the intermediary of chloroplasts to get food. You need to learn to eat light directly. And as we begin to do this, this is where our evolution is heading. Our evolution is not something that happens over eons and ages and changes, over many generations. Now the teeth got longer. Now the eyes got sharper. No, your evolution is evolution of consciousness, and it happens within one lifetime, within one lifespan. So you have the potential with your body right now to transform into a light eater and flap your arms very hard and jump off the surface of the planet without a metal spaceship and go to new places. If that sounds interesting to you, please continue to tune in to Birth of a New Dimension. Continue to learn about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Check out my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com, and maybe even enroll in Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey.